everybody. Ron Wildman, and again for former Macon Mayor Jack Ellis on Middle Georgia Spotlight. And we have with us a current mayor.
That's right.
The mayor of Warner Robins.
Yeah.
Randy Toms is with us.
Thanks for having me, Ron.
How
Appreciate
you doing?
it. Well, I'm hanging in there. Things are a little bit stressful right now, but going as well as could be expected.
Not easy for any of us, no
No,
matter
it's
what
not.
level of life we're in.
Absolutely not. It's certainly changed the whole complexion of everything that we do. It's an amazing time right now. Yeah.
You had to do some shutting down.
Right.
When did that occur? When did you take this thing seriously? Maybe that's the way I should
Yeah,
say it.
I mean, pretty quickly after, I said yesterday in a Facebook Live I was doing that we were ahead of the curve to help flatten the curve in the city of Warner Robins. We found out about what was going on, got a little more information on it. I think the governor had already issued a declaration of emergency, and we in the city of Warner Robins, I had issued a declaration of emergency also. And then a couple of days after that, we entered, I submitted an executive order closing down certain businesses, putting, just kind of putting it out there that this is a serious event. So we took it seriously right off the bat as soon as we started hearing about it.
This was prior to the statewide shutdowns.
Yes. In fact, we were a little bit ahead of them. And then when the governor came out with his shelter-in-place order and his executive order, the first time, we of course then fell under his order, and ours was kind of put on hold. But they were a lot similar. There was not a whole lot different between my order and the governor's order when it first came out.
I recall in the news a few days before your order, you were concerned about the figures in Houston County, in Warner Robins.
About what now?
But the figures, those who had it,
Oh,
and
yeah.
the deaths.
Oh, yeah.
And
yeah.
it prompted you to, well, we're not doing a very good job down here.
Yeah, I just didn't think at first, and there's been some people make the accusation that I only did that because a friend of mine actually had it and ended up passing away, and that's not true at all. I was concerned about all the citizens of Warner Robins, of Houston County, really of, everybody. I'm concerned about this whole thing, and I think when we first put the orders out, I don't think people, and I can only focus on Warner Robins and Houston County and what was going on there. I just didn't feel like people were taking it very seriously. They were going, to buy plants. They were going to do this and standing in line and letting too many people into stores, and that really concerned me because I didn't want this thing to spread. I thought the whole idea was as the saying is now, flatten the curve, bring things under control a little bit. I mean, it's a real virus, and it's really causing people to get sick, and ultimately it's causing some people to die, and that's a serious event. And so I did make some statements early on that I didn't think people were taking it seriously enough and weren't doing a very good job of social distancing and doing the stores right, going in a little bit at a time. And so, yeah, I made those statements early, but I think over time, I think people started realizing the seriousness of it. And what I'm finding out is that a lot of people know people that have it. And I think once they understand that, hey, this is pretty much striking everybody if we're not careful, I think people in general started taking it a lot more seriously. And I'm actually proud of Warner Robins and Houston County right now at the efforts they're making in an uncomfortable time to make this thing work.
Well, it takes a little bit of time to catch on. At least that's the way it was for me.
Absolutely. I mean, we're so used to doing things,
Yes.
and I talk about all the time, in Middle Georgia, we're used to shaking hands. We're used to even hugging down here in this part of the country. We're social people. We're friendly people. We love each other, and we want to show that affection for each other, but right now it's just not the safe thing to do. And so, I've seen people do the distance hug and that kind of stuff because we're used to being, compassionate with each other and showing that kind of affection, and it's just not a good time for that. So, but it's a change in our culture, that's for sure.
Our situation in Warner Robins, as of now, what is it?
And you mean in that respects of how people are
Shut
handling
down?
it? Right now, it's still under the governor's order, and things are slowly reopening. So that's a good question, and I really do appreciate the opportunity to answer that question. So as of the governor's order took effect Friday, where hair salons, nail salons, those kind of places could open. So I took the time Friday to get on the phone and just call a pretty good number of hair salons and ask them, how are things going? Are you opening? And what I found is that a lot of places are not ready to open yet. They're either not ready with the things in effect, the PPE and all of the cleaning materials, everything they have to have in place to open. It's pretty stringent. I mean, there's like 39 things they have to have in order to reopen. So it's a pretty strict list that they have to follow in order to open those kind of businesses.
39, I understand.
Yeah, right. 39. So it's a long list of things they have to do. So as I talked to some of the people that I got in touch with Friday, some were not ready to open physically because they didn't have the things ready to open yet, and some of them were not emotionally ready. They said, I could open, but I'm just not ready to do that yet. I'm not ready to cross that line and get there yet. So that was encouraging to me that they're thinking about it before they open. Some were opening, but you could tell there was a certain amount of fear and trepidation in their voice as they were talking about reopening. In fact, I said the other day on my Facebook Live that one lady I talked to at a hair salon, she said, "Look, I know I'm not supposed to be afraid, but so I kind of interjected and I said, look, the Bible tells us over and over and over, don't be afraid, fear not, do not be afraid. I said, but at the same time in Psalms 56:3 it says, at what time I am afraid, I will trust in you. So I encouraged her with Psalm 56:3 that says, God knows He tells us not to be afraid, but at the same time, He gives us instructions on what to do when we are afraid. So that's encouraging, is that when I'm afraid, the only thing sometimes I can do is trust Him, because it's a crazy world right now. And for us to trust ourselves and our own ability to come up with the answers, it's not going to happen right now.
You are a minister.
I am, yes.
Do you have a regular church you speak at?
No,
or
I don't.
How do you do that?
Yeah, I served for 15 years as chaplain of the Georgia Association of Fire Chiefs. And so I really became an ordained minister to serve those like me that are firefighters. I spent 27 years in the fire service. And so I spent about 15 of those years as chaplain of the whole state of Georgia Fire Chiefs Association. I had a lot of opportunities over that time to go preach throughout the state, preach funerals, weddings, services all over the state. And now I speak whenever I get the opportunity to speak. I'm a little bit busy in the job I have full time, but I love to be able to go out and preach and teach and share God's word with other people.
What I'm getting around to, did you ever thought you'd
No.
see our churches shut down on
No.
Sunday? Easter Sunday especially.
And that was extra for me, Easter Sunday, and that's a great point. I had the opportunity Easter Sunday morning to go preach a sunrise service at Robins Air Force Base, and it was eerie because it was, I thought I had a really good message, and nobody showed up to hear it. But it's because of the situation we're in. There was literally 4 people. We were outside, myself and 4 others. One of them was Colonel Moore, the installation commander, and they were all sitting and scattered out, way more than 6 feet apart, and then the camera person. And so it was very, very unique to be able to preach that service. But at the same time, there were people all over the country and hopefully all over the world that got a chance to hear the message I was bringing that morning, because it was about resurrection and how we are going to resurrect out of this situation we're in. And we're going to come back and we're going to be stronger than we were before. And so I think that's important to know, that sometimes we get in a situation of doubt, we get in a situation of fear, but the fact remains is that we're going to be okay in the long run. We're going through a lot of losses, and I never want to diminish the loss of some of our citizens throughout Middle Georgia, throughout our state and our nation, and the world for that matter. But we're going through this, but we are going to pull together, and we are going to come out of this stronger than we were when we went in. I'm convinced of that.
When?
That's a little bit more of a difficult question. I think it's going to be touch and go. I think we're going to see a slow reopening in Middle Georgia and in the state of Georgia. I think the fear is that are we going to see a resurgence of it while we're coming out of it, or if not now, later on in the year? And I think to some degree we probably will. But I think it's so different than anything else we've ever dealt with. You know, I think this is the one thing. I read a comment, or my wife actually read it to me, that this is the first time in human history that we've ever quarantined the people that are well. And that's been the strange part about this. We know that in times past that people have been quarantined, but we quarantine the sick. This time we quarantined the sick, but we've also isolated and to some degree quarantined the people that are well by shelter in place, and it changes the complexity of things.
Well, that's the amazing thing of this disease, is that you can't tell if you're well or not.
Right.
I can't look at you and say, you've got it.
That's true. That's true, and that's the thing, you know, that concerned me so much about healthy, especially young people, is, you know, even when you saw the news, the national news, and you saw the young people on spring break several weeks ago or whatever, and they weren't taking it very seriously, and that's fine, because they could probably get the disease or get the virus, and they would probably be okay. But what happens is they take it back home and they give it to somebody like their grandparents, who are not going to be okay if they get it. And I think that's the thing that we missed somewhere along the way. And hopefully we're catching up on that too. But this thing's dangerous and it's scary. You know, I have an 87-year-old father and an 88-year-old father-in-law. And I want them both just to stay at home. If you need something, I'll go get it for you. You know, I mean, I go see my father, I go see my father-in-law, and just the other day, I mean, my dad was losing his mind because he needed a haircut. Well, he cuts his hair real short anyway, so I did it. And, you know, we're having to do things now that we never thought we would have to do. And he actually looks okay after I cut his hair. I did a pretty good job.
Well, that's great. My daughter did mine.
That's right. Right.
She thought she did a good job.
That's right.
I haven't looked at it, though.
That's right.
I just kind of.
Yeah, well, my wife did her father's, and he doesn't need to look at it, I can tell you.
City Hall. What's the situation at City Hall? What are your working hours now?
Yeah, right now we're still on the schedule that we've been over the last few weeks, and that is we bring a limited number of people into City Hall on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and they basically come in and process payments that have been made in our drop boxes through the drive-through and in the back of City Hall. They pay bills that need to be paid. So we have some finance people, some customer service people that come in, but we haven't allowed any public to come in during the last few weeks. Next week we're actually going to change up a little bit. So some people have had a difficult time. A lot of people switched over to paying online, which was good. We made it easier for them to pay online. Some people have taken advantage of our drop boxes, but next week, starting Tuesday, we're going to open up the drive-through for payments at the drive-through window from 9 until 1 on Tuesdays and Thursdays. We're going to bring a few more people in as the week goes on to kind of get everybody comfortable. It's a scary time. I mean, it just really is, and that can't be overstated. So for our employees, for all the citizens, it's a very scary time. And the thought of reopening and bringing people back together is something that it brings about that level of fear that we want to kind of conquer slowly. And so we're going to bring a few more people into all of our public buildings a little bit along until we get up to full speed. And hopefully this thing will be behind us in the next few weeks. That's my prayer, and we'll be able to get back up to normal daily operations.
Any specific May dates?
Well, right now, yes, we're looking at May the 14th.
Okay.
After the governor's emergency declaration
if he doesn't
change it. That's exactly right. And that's the way we put it out, is that assuming that this declaration stays in place until the 13th, we'll start normal operations to the best we can on the 14th. But that's still, you know, I was talking to somebody today, and this whole thing, the whole situation of COVID-19 has been an ever-changing situation. As soon as you think you have an answer for how you're going to operate or how you're going to close this or open this, the whole thing changes. The landscape, if you will, changes, and it becomes a different story. I've also said this, and I mean this with all my heart, is that anybody that thinks they would have known how to handle this situation, I don't believe it. I just don't believe it, because it was so unusual, something we've never done before.
I was going to ask you, what's it feel like to have that power to shut folks down. You know, some of the barber shops,
Yeah.
the beauty shops, these 1 and 2 place,
Yeah.
and it means the world to these people. That's
It
their
does.
life, and that can't be an easy decision to make.
No, it was heartbreaking. I mean, it really was, and it's still heartbreaking to know that those people's lives have been affected. You know, their livelihood has been affected. At the end of the day, I really feel better having made some impact on their life, as opposed to even though it has an adverse effect on their livelihood hopefully for a short period of time. I did what I thought we needed to do to protect life. And I will tell you this, Ron, that the most encouraging thing is that most people that were affected by our shutdown orders have been grateful that we stepped in and did that, because I think they understand what a complex situation this is, and I think that they needed some help in making those decisions for the health and safety of everybody. And I don't mean that they didn't know how to do it. It's just, for me, for example, when the governor came out with his executive order a few days after mine, I felt better that it had been now addressed on a state level, to know that what we were doing was the right thing for our citizenry.
Now, the signature event for Warner Robins
Yeah.
is that July 4th celebration.
Right.
What kind of thought process went into that? Because July
Yeah.
4th is down the road a little bit.
Right, it is, and hopefully, as we go down the road and we come to July the 4th, we're past this. I mean, that's the hope. But this whole 4th of July celebration for us is a big deal. I mean, it's something that we start signing contracts on now. And then there was, in discussion with producers and contract situations, we started realizing that some of the talent that we could bring to the concert this year, they're canceling concerts now. And so one of the things that we had to take into consideration is if we signed a contract with them now, in July they may decide to start making up some of the concerts that they had to cancel previously and then bump us down the road, if at all. And so that was one of the things. And another thing is I personally do not believe that even if the virus ended today, I just don't believe that people are going to want to congregate in numbers over 10,000, which our numbers run, you know, in excess of 10,000 at our 4th of July celebration. I just don't think that they're going to want to congregate in those numbers. And I just don't think it's a good idea. I think now is the time for us to plan for some kind of fall celebration, celebrating the end of this virus.
Well, if the masters can change.
Yes, exactly right. Exactly. Yeah.
That entertainment industry has been just shut down totally.
Oh, yeah.
And you have folks in Nashville, where we get most of our music folks, is really suffering. They're really suffering.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, this thing has been, it's just been destructive in so many ways. But again, all of that takes second place to the safety, to the health, and the life of citizens.
Your police and fire department and other city departments' business has to proceed. There's some things you just have to do.
Right. Yeah, police and fire are always there, and they've been working every way they can to social distance. And so they've been, you know, limiting their stops to absolutely necessary stops. They've been, you know, in the building itself, when they come in, the law enforcement building, you know, they stay apart. They try to stay apart. They use PPE and those kind of things. We've provided them with as much sanitizer and hand sanitizers as we possibly can. Fire department's a little bit unique because those guys go out on calls. They come back together and they're living in the same building. So it's kind of one of the first things I did, having been a firefighter for so long, is I let my fire chief know that for their well-being, both physically and mentally, that every room in the building at a fire station was what we call a bunk room. So usually they have a kitchen and a day room and then even a weightlifting room and then a bunk room where they all sleep together. Well, I went ahead and told them that they could move beds all over that building if they wanted to feel the, comfort of sleeping separately, so that they did, if something were to happen, they weren't that close to each other even when they sleep.
How many guys are usually on a shift in a house?
In a particular firehouse, there's some that may only have 3 on a day, but there's some that might have 7 or 8. So I mean, and then you get a pretty good sized bunk room, but you're still sleeping, 4 or 5 feet apart. And so I just wanted them the comfort of knowing that they could do what they wanted to, and we closed those buildings down to the public coming in, and so they were free to do what they wanted to do.
Your fire department also does medical rescue, don't they?
We do, and we did stop a lot of the calls that we typically go on. We went on in that line of work what we call code 3s. So if they had somebody that was having a heart attack or something, but some of the things that we typically just go out and help, we kind of pulled back on that some. So it reduced our call volume a lot over the last couple of months, but it gives it, if you saw some of the calls that our guys go on, you would think we needed to do that some anyway, but that put them in less situations than they normally would have been.
Imagine they get frivolous calls.
They do, yeah, they do a lot, and so I think we need to evaluate that going into the future. And that's one of the things I've told my department directors is that some of the things that we're doing now out of necessity because of the virus, they're actually good ideas, and we need to implement some of those. I'll give you an example. We have always wanted to stream our meetings on Facebook Live and then put it over on YouTube and those kind of things, and we just never did it. Now, out of necessity, we have the Zoom meetings, number one, through teleconference, and then we also put them on Facebook Live. And I told Mandy Stella, my executive assistant, I said, this is a mainstay now. We're going to have to stick with this moving into the future. And she's the one that has been video and Facebook Live, and so it's something we're going to keep doing even after this virus is behind us.
You wouldn't want to do away with the live public meetings eventually?
No, we wouldn't do that. No, we are actually anxious to get back to meeting in live meetings. At first it was a little bit of a reprieve, but there's a lot of value to meeting in person, and I'm anxious to get back to that.
The base is Warner Robins, and Warner
Right.
Robins is the base.
Right.
How are they handling it over there?
I think they're doing a great job. Number one, for the first several weeks, the base commander, Colonel Moore, and General Kubinick, the ALC commander, would be on a teleconference with me, Mayor Walker from Perry, Mayor Harley from Centerville, and Chairman Stonecker from House and County, and we would have a conference call and discuss what our plans were, what was working, what wasn't working, what are some things that we could help each other with, especially in ideas or suggestions. They would update us on the base on where they were, what their status was, and the communications they were having with their med group, and then they're also the commander at Tinker, and then we one time even had Mr. Briscoe from House and Health Care and Chris Sykes from the Department of Public Health on the call with us to kind of give us updates. And so we've been very, very connected during this time. I didn't know that you could be on so many conference calls as I have over the last number of weeks. I mean, yesterday I was on 4 different conference calls or webinars or different things. Today I've been on several. So it's changed how we do business, but it's been very informative to talk with the base and find out how their status is and what their plan is. I won't speak for them, but what their plan on getting back up to normal or as close to as we can to normal.
Have they scaled back much over there?
On one side of the base they have, and you look at it like 2 different sides. On the ALC side, where they're actually doing the work on the aircraft, they've done some changing, but they have to provide those airplanes for the warfighter.
Well, they're our police department, aren't they?
Right, exactly. And so they've been working steady with some changes, but to make things safer. But again, we have wars going on other than this COVID-19 war, and so they got to get airplanes ready for the war and deliver them back to the warfighter. And that's been encouraging to know that they've held steady on what they're doing at Robins Air Force Base. On the air wing side, they can change a little bit. They've been telecommuting some, which makes a difference, but you know, they're looking at slowly bringing those back like we're doing in the city. In fact, just yesterday morning, we had a conference call with the base commander and the general. We've gone back to just once a week now, and we were all pretty much, all of us, the chairman, the 3 mayors, and the base commanders, we're all kind of on the same page as how we want to move forward towards that May 14th date and into the future. How do we get back to the closest to normal that we can?
And we're going to do it, aren't we?
And we are going to do it.
What about the folks that are running the grocery stores, the places that we really need to be open? These folks who handle the cash registers, right. We have a new appreciation of these people, don't we?
Yeah, you know, and I did that the other day in my Facebook Live as well. Thank you to our hospital workers and our frontline people. You can't say that enough, and it's it pales to what they really deserve. But right now, all we can say is thank you. There's been a lot of people reaching out to them with meals and gifts and all that kind of stuff, and that's great. But what a job they're doing. I mean, the hospital staffs and the fire and the police, they're still out there doing the job, and they're doing it under way different and extreme conditions. But then you look, like you said, at the grocery stores,
the clerks,
they're on the front lines just as much. I mean, they're in unfamiliar, unknown situations. They never know who's going to come through their line, who's going to be, you know, this close to them, and sometimes inadvertently too close, and what does that mean? And that puts a whole different level of fear on them and that kind of stuff. But they're doing the job. They're there, and when, you know, the very few times that I've been to the grocery store, not that I went a lot anyway, they're smiling and they're doing their job incredibly. And so I said Tuesday, and I'll say it again today, thank you for the work that everybody on the front lines is doing for all of us to keep us what we need and to keep us safe.
And in the future, well, I think we'll carry this over. And that's what's going to help make things better too, I have to say.
It is, you know, and that's my hope, Ron, and one of my hopes in this situation is that, you know, after 9/11, that kind of feeling, it was all over the place. And then you watched it over time. And I was a minister in the fire service at that time, and I watched it just kind of die down. I hope this one don't die down. I hope we understand that this was life and death. This was serious stuff right here. And I care a whole lot more about you than the things I might not like about you. And I think we need to focus on the good, and we need to focus on the positive. And that's how we can make our community a better place, our government's a better place, our state and our nation a better place by caring more about each other than we do about the things we might disagree on.
I can't think of a better place to end it all. Thank you, Mayor Thomas, for being
sir.
with us. And good luck with all those future decisions you'll have to make.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for joining us. For Mayor Ellis, I'm Ron Wildman here at WMUB TV.